They're calling it the moment that shattered a family's image, an apology that didn't sound like surrender, but strategy. The story goes like this. Jackie Christie stood in a courtroom and did the unthinkable. Not just a public apology, something far more explosive. She allegedly pointed the finger at her own daughter, Chantel. If that sounds unreal, you're not alone. The internet couldn't look away. A mother pulling back the curtain on her own child? People couldn't decide what was more unbelievable, the claim itself, or how calm she supposedly sounded while doing it. Was it survival mode, a manipulative pivot, or a preview of a scandal that's been brewing for years? Before we dive in, tap subscribe so you don't miss the next twist, because if the chatter is right, this story is still warming up. The atmosphere around this story didn't start with a bang. It simmered. It started with whispers, offhand comments, threads that felt random until you looked again. Then the pieces began to line up. Jackie, known for big reactions and bigger comebacks, allegedly made an apology that wasn't about closure. It was a move, a shift. A hand on the chessboard pushing a piece everyone thought she would protect. The daughter who had mostly stayed out of the public chaos got pulled into the center. For a family that's lived under bright lights and loud headlines, this felt different. It wasn't a TV feud or a social media spat. It was something colder, more calculated, and it was aimed inward. The narrative that took off online had a rhythm. First, Jackie owned up to mistakes in a tone people described as polished, practiced, even poised. Then midstream came the pivot. She suggested that Chantel had been quietly steering deals, shaping outcomes, and leveraging last names like assets. Not a full accusation, not a detailed confession, something in between, a breadcrumb trail, enough to make people reconsider the family dynamic, enough to make the rumor mill explode. Almost immediately, the buzz changed. This wasn't just a mother overreacting. This was a possible strategy to distance herself from fallout that hadn't fully dropped yet. And if that's true, the question becomes simple and brutal. What was she running from? That's where the speculation machine kicked into high gear. People began bringing up whispers that had been floating around for weeks. Quiet side deals, unfamiliar partners, and a few recurring names that made certain corners of the internet raise their eyebrows. The Christie name holds weight. It opens doors. It can also cast long shadows. Fans started asking whether Chantel had been running moves in the background. Some say harmless, others say questionable. The story widened. What seemed like a one-day drama started feeling like the front edge of a storm. And as more people weighed in, the tone sharpened. Was this ambition gone too far, or a setup where someone else needed a scapegoat at the perfect time? It didn't help that certain claims sounded cinematic. That's the trap. The moment you hear words like emails and recordings or leaks, your brain fills in the gaps. Reports claim there are messages, cold, efficient, unemotional. Notes about clean numbers, tight paperwork, no traces. If those messages exist, they're devastating. If they don't, they're still persuasive, because rumor works like smoke. You see it before you find the fire, and sometimes the smoke is all people need. That's why this story has such a grip. It's hazy enough to be debated, clear enough to feel real, and personal enough to sting. Then certain names started popping up in thread after thread. Someone mentioned Benzino. Another post echoed the same. Not proof, just repetition. And repetition is powerful. Once a name with history gets attached, the room gets quiet. People start connecting dots whether the lines are real or not. And that's the danger, and the draw. If you're watching for hard evidence, you wait for case numbers, filings, jurisdictions, documents. If you're watching for chaos, you don't need any of that. You just need volume. Make sure you're subscribed, because when paperwork does show up, if it shows up, we're breaking it down line by line without fluff. While the noise built around Chantel, the reaction to Jackie split people down the middle. Some called it self-preservation. Others called it betrayal with a smile. Either way, the effect was the same. Every sentence she spoke got replayed. Every moment got slowed down and scrutinized. And the more that happened, the more her words sounded surgical. Not panicked, not emotional, intentional. Like someone who knows how to hold a narrative steady in a storm. The apology didn't soften the blow, it sharpened it. With one move, Jackie managed to create space for herself. Enough to breathe, maybe enough to pivot, while pushing the spotlight toward Chantel. If that was the goal, it worked immediately. Now let's be clear, there's a reason people are urging caution. The wildest claims tend to spread the fastest, and the loudest posts rarely come with citations. The story's most dramatic beats, secret tapes, offshore funds, hush meetings, live in the gray zone between accusation and evidence. Some outlets repeat what sources say. Others throw a headline at the wall and see what sticks. That's why it's important to hold two ideas at once. The allegations are compelling, and they're unverified. You can be skeptical of both the family and the feeding frenzy, and still the attention isn't accidental. Stories like this don't grow by themselves. They need oxygen. They need that perfect mix of familiarity and shock. A mother-daughter fault line provides both. Meanwhile, the portrait of Chantel that's forming online is split down the middle. Some see a quiet operator who built a network for the days when headlines turn. Others see someone caught in someone else's plan, realizing too late how the board was set. The chatter says she moved carefully, kept a short list of allies, kept the circle small, kept distance where it mattered. That's smart move-making. It's also the sort of thing that looks suspicious when the wind turns. If she speaks, the tone will matter more than the content. Defiance makes enemies. Detail makes believers. Silence makes room for everyone else to talk. Then there's the money conversation. It always arrives around the midpoint, and when it does, it takes over. People online started throwing around terms like shell companies, fronts, charitable funnels, and real estate vehicles. Reports claim there were channels set up to keep streams clean on paper, even if the water ran muddy underneath. Some say this is a critique you can aim at half the industry. Others say this is different, more organized, more intentional. If you've been around long enough, you know the pattern. First whispers, then leaks, then screenshots. Some screenshots look convincing, some look like wishful thinking. The truth, if it shows up, usually arrives in documents with headers, stamps, and dates. Until then, it's a maze of maybe. One thing no one seems to argue with: the fallout is already here. Followers who never wavered are wobbling. People who rolled their eyes at past drama are paying attention now. And fans who used to defend Jackie with their whole chest are starting to ask, is this a line you don't cross? The court of public opinion doesn't need a docket number to deliver a verdict. It has its own rules. It moves faster. It forgives slower. And it remembers longer, especially when the story feels like a betrayal from the inside. An apology that points outward doesn't feel like closure. It feels like a start. Let's rewind for a second and talk about the trigger. Why now? Why here? Why like this? If the apology was a move, the timing matters. Was there a leak incoming? Was a partner flipping? Was a story about to break that needed a counterweight? You don't need to know the answer to see the pattern. When people in high places make public statements that shift blame, they're rarely improvising. It's either because they think they can control the cascade or because they know they can't, and they want to steer as much as possible. If Jackie has been in the game this long, she knows the difference. Which means her pivot, if strategic, wasn't spontaneous. It was the product of conversations we weren't in. What would those conversations sound like? Reports claim they're very practical. Simple language, no flourish, just steps. Who to call, who to cut, who to keep. Who gets statement A, who gets statement B. If that exists, it paints a picture of someone who planned for bad weather. If it doesn't, it still outlines the mindset people think she has. That's the thing. Perception sticks even when facts don't. And once the internet decides someone is calculated, every movement becomes proof. Every pause feels intentional. Every smile looks like strategy. The wildest angle in this saga is the suggestion of recordings. That word alone changes the temperature in the room. Everyone leans in. Everyone wants to know who has them, what's on them, and when they'll drop. Reports claim those tapes include conversations about how to bury the trail, how to move numbers, how to route funds, how to keep it clean enough for a quick glance while keeping the core safely hidden. If such tapes exist, we're not talking about damage control. We're talking about a playbook written over time. And if they don't exist, then the rumor is still genius because it freezes everyone. You don't move boldly when you're worried a recording might surface. Amid all this, another line of chatter started to build: politics. The idea that money didn't just move into projects or personal accounts, but into campaigns, surrogates, and messaging machines. That's rocket fuel for outrage. It suggests reach. It suggests power. It suggests that this isn't just a family drama, but a network. Reports claim funds touched everything from media buys to community events that double as public image polishing. The truth is, without hard documentation, this remains a specter. but the idea alone is potent. It reframes a reality TV scandal into something with implications beyond entertainment. That's why people can't stop talking. It's not just juicy, it's consequential if it's true. The tug of war in public opinion has another layer: loyalty. Fans don't just follow personalities, they invest in stories, they pick sides, they see themselves in the dynamics. A complicated mother-daughter bond is endlessly relatable, which is exactly why this cuts so deep. If you've ever had a strained relationship with a parent, this feels familiar in all the worst ways. The push-pull of love and resentment, the need to protect and the need to be seen. The moment when someone says, "I'm sorry," but you realize they're not apologizing to you, they're apologizing for themselves. That's why this hits. Not because it's flashy, but because it's human. And then there's the brand. The Christie name isn't just a name, it's a business. Appearances, partnerships, opportunities, everything is tied up in the image. That's the pressure cooker. When you build on perception, a crack isn't cosmetic, it's structural. The brand can survive controversy, it feeds on it. But it struggles with doubt. Doubt makes sponsors hesitate. Doubt makes partners request calls. Doubt makes deals slow down. In a game where momentum pays bills, hesitation is expensive. So while the internet argues about guilt, behind the scenes the fight might be simpler. Keep the phone ringing. Which brings us to the practical question. What happens next? If there are filings, they'll surface. If there are charges, they'll be public. If there are tapes, someone will want the credit for dropping them. If there's a plea, it will leak. That's how these stories evolve. They might feel unpredictable, but they follow a very recognizable arc. Stories, pressure, silence, statement, leak, fallout, rinse, repeat. The only variable is how quickly the cycle spins and who gets thrown off first. Subscribe now so when the next piece lands, you don't catch it secondhand. We'll lay out what's real and what's recycled rumor so you can see the shape of the truth for yourself. Of course, there's another path, and it's far less dramatic. Nothing concrete happens. No documents, no dockets, no tapes. The story lives and dies online, and eventually people move on to the next spectacle. That doesn't mean there was nothing there. It means the proof you need to turn suspicion into fact never arrived. In that case, the verdict is social, not legal. The cost isn't prison, it's reputation. It's doors that don't open as easily. It's a shadow that follows you into every room, and maybe that's the harshest outcome of all. It doesn't end, it lingers. Here's what makes this moment so precarious for the Christies. They built a machine that runs on attention, and attention doesn't distinguish between applause and accusation. It's all fuel. The problem is, the wrong kind of fuel burns hot and fast and leaves damage you can't buff out. Every choice now carries a double weight. Speak and you add to the noise. Stay silent and people write your lines for you. Distance yourself and you look detached. Stand close and you look complicit. It's a lose-lose grid. The only win is truth, and even then, it has to be the kind that can be printed and stamped. Let's talk motives. If Jackie's apology was exactly how it's being described, what's the upside? Distance, plausible deniability, leverage in a negotiation you hope is coming. Protect the brand by isolating the risk. That sounds cold, but it's common. The calculus is brutal. Protect the majority, sacrifice the minority. In this case, the equation looks like mother versus daughter, but in branding terms, it's legacy versus liability. Would a mother actually do that? Some say never. Others say yes if she believes she's protecting the entire family's future. People do the unthinkable when they convince themselves it's noble. What about Chantel? If she's as independent as some claim, her next move matters. You don't counter sentiment with sentiment. You counter it with specifics, dates, names, receipts. Or you go the other way entirely and refuse to play on the internet's timeline. You let the frenzy peak and fall, and you handle the real business where it matters: paper, counsel, calls. That's a gamble in an era where silence reads as guilt. But it's a disciplined gamble. The internet is not owed an answer. It just feels like it is. And we can't ignore the wild card, the people around them. Associates, former partners, friends who know too much, acquaintances who know just enough to be dangerous. Those are the folks who flip a narrative without ever stepping into a spotlight. Reports claim an ex-associate surfaced with details that link names and deals in ways that are hard to dismiss. Again, that's reports claim, not certified fact. But if even a fraction is true, it suggests a web, not a single thread. A web is resilient. it's also fragile. Pull the right strand, and the whole thing collapses. Whenever stories hit this level, someone always asks, why do we care? Why does this matter beyond gossip? Here's one answer. The line between entertainment and influence is gone. The people who shape culture also shape taste, attention, and sometimes policy. When power moves silently through glamorous spaces, it deserves scrutiny. Not moral panic, scrutiny. If the allegations stay as allegations, we note it and move on. If they become evidence, then this stops being a spectacle and becomes a case study in how image can mask machinery. Until then, the most honest position is curiosity with caution. It's fine to be fascinated. It's smart to be skeptical. It's necessary to separate what's confirmed from what's compelling. And it's fair to say this, the story doesn't feel finished. Every time it looks like it's settling, something stirs it back up. That's either because there's more underneath, or because the story is too valuable to let go quiet. Either way, the result is the same. We wait. And while we wait, we watch for patterns. Here's a pattern to watch. If more leaks arrive without documentation, the goal might be pressure, not truth. If names start getting repeated without new detail, the goal might be association, not accuracy. If the tone of statements shifts from confident to careful, the reality may be changing behind the scenes. Patterns don't give you conclusions, they give you clues. And in a fog of rumor, clues are all you get. One more thing that's getting lost in the noise, the human cost. No matter where the facts land, this is a family, mother and daughter. That bond doesn't break clean, it frays, it snaps in ugly, jagged ways. Even if the brands survive, the people at the center have to live with what's said and what's implied. If you've ever had a private fight go public, you know the feeling. It doesn't matter who's right. It matters that everyone is watching. You lose the right to make mistakes in silence. That's the cruelest part of celebrity. There's no room to be complicated. So where does that leave us tonight? With a story balanced between spectacle and substance, with claims that could be career-ending if proven, and career-altering even if not. With a mother who may have made the most decisive move of her public life, and a daughter whose next step could decide whether this becomes a cautionary tale or a full-blown collapse. It started with an apology, but apologies are about the past. The question now is about the future. Who holds it, who shapes it, and who pays for it? We're not here to jump to the end. We're here to track the middle carefully. If documents surface, we'll read the fine print. If tapes drop, we'll separate the headline from the transcript. If statements are issued, we'll compare them to the timeline. And if nothing happens, we'll say that too. That's the promise. No panic, no parroting, just clarity. If you want that without the spin, hit subscribe now. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the moment this story actually turns from rumor into record. Drop your take in the comments. Do you think this is strategic framing, or the start of something that's about to get very, very real? Either way, we're on it. Until the next update, remember, attention is a currency, and everyone in this story knows how to spend it. The trick is figuring out who's investing and who's cashing out. We'll see you when the next piece lands. Stay sharp, stay curious, and don't let the loudest version of the story become the only one you hear.